Touch that car again, and your mother can clean bathrooms somewhere else. Graham Holt's voice cracked across the glass-walled restoration hall, sharp enough to stop the champagne glasses halfway to people's mouths. His hand clamped around the strap of Isaiah Brooks's faded backpack and yanked the 16-year-old black boy back from the red velvet rope. To the guests, Isaiah was only the maid's son in a worn hoodie, standing too close to a priceless Ferrari. Someone laughed under their breath. 2 phones lifted. Marlene Brooks froze in her gray housekeeping uniform, one hand still wrapped around a spray bottle. The Ferrari coughed once behind them. Graham slammed a metal clipboard onto the work table. Clang! A small tuning fork slipped from Isaiah's backpack, hit the polished stone floor, and sang a thin silver note. Isaiah did not reach for Graham. He did not shout. He just looked past the restoration director, toward the dark space beneath the Ferrari's dashboard, and said quietly, "Sir, that mist did not come from the engine bay." The room changed, but only for a breath. Graham's smile disappeared, then came back colder. "What did you say?" Isaiah swallowed. The tuning fork was still trembling near his sneaker, its sound fading under the low murmur of the crowd. Above them, the white lights of Reeves' Motor Conservatory burned against the curved glass ceiling. Every surface shined: the marble floor, the chrome railings, the row of antique racing trophies locked behind spotless cases. In the center of it all sat the red Ferrari, low and beautiful, surrounded by cameras, collectors, technicians, and men who spoke about engines the way priests spoke about scripture. Isaiah stood on the wrong side of that world. His mother knew it. He knew it. Graham wanted everyone else to know it, too. "You heard him," Graham said, turning toward the guests with a laugh that invited them to join. "The child from service entrance has diagnosed a 12-cylinder Ferrari by standing next to it for 30 seconds. A few people smiled because Graham was the restoration director, because his suit fit perfectly, because his name was printed in gold on the evening program. Marlene stepped forward, voice low. "Mr. Holt, please. He was just bringing me my medicine." He did not mean any disrespect. Disrespect, Graham snapped his head toward her. Disrespect is dragging your family problems into a private preview. He pointed at Isaiah without looking at him. "This is not a school parking lot. This is not a church basement. This is a controlled restoration environment, and that boy just crossed a line he cannot even afford to understand." The words landed harder than the clipboard. Isaiah saw his mother's fingers tighten around the spray bottle until the plastic bent. She had worked 12 hours already. She had ironed the crease into that uniform herself. She had reminded him twice on the bus not to stare, not to touch, not to make anyone remember they were there. Yet here they were, under every light in the building, watched by people who could buy silence with a signature. "I did not touch the car," Isaiah said. His voice was small, but it did not shake. Graham stepped closer. He smelled like mint and expensive leather. "No, you only wandered into a restricted area and started talking nonsense in front of my clients." He jabbed a finger toward the Ferrari. "That car has been examined by specialists from 3 countries. Men with degrees. Men with decades of experience. Men who do not carry tuning forks in school bags and pretend that makes them engineers." Another laugh moved through the crowd, softer this time. Nervous. A woman in a silver dress lowered her phone as if she suddenly felt ashamed of recording. Near the rear workstation, Lena Ortiz, one of the younger technicians, looked at the dashboard, then at Isaiah. Her face did not laugh. Isaiah noticed. Graham noticed Isaiah noticing. "Marcus," Graham called without turning. A security guard near the entrance straightened. "Escort the boy out." Marlene's breath caught. "Please, sir. Please do not do that. I need this job." Graham lifted one hand, calm now, enjoying the control. "Then you should have taught him where he belongs." Isaiah bent slowly and picked up the tuning fork. It was old, dull at the handle, stamped with tiny initials from a church music room that no one in that hall would care about. He closed it in his fist. The Ferrari coughed again. Not loud, not dramatic, just a half-beat stumble beneath the smooth growl, followed by a tiny click that vanished under the air conditioning. Isaiah's eyes moved to the lower dashboard again. There, a hairline gap under the leather trim. Something blue tucked behind black wiring. Not new plastic. Old cloth. He took one step without meaning to. Graham blocked him with his body. Do not even think about it. There is something behind the panel, Isaiah said. It clicks before the miss. It is not fuel. It is not the main ignition box. The hall went almost quiet. Not silent yet. Not the kind of silence that comes when truth has won. This was the silence before people decide whether to mock someone or fear they have mocked the wrong person. Graham laughed once, too loud. Listen to yourself. You do not even know what you are looking at. Then start again, Isaiah said. Marlene whispered his name, warning and prayer in the same breath. Marcus, the security guard, moved closer, but slowly now. Graham's face hardened. I do not take orders from children. I'm not giving an order, Isaiah said. I am asking you to listen. That was the wrong word. Listen. It cut something in Graham. His jaw tightened. He snatched an incident report from the work table and slapped it down in front of Marlene. Sign this. Marlene stared at the paper. What is it? A violation statement. Unauthorized minor in a restricted restoration area. Disruption of a private client event. Potential interference with a vehicle valued higher than this entire service staff will earn in a lifetime. He pushed a pen toward her. Sign it, and maybe I'll let you keep tonight's paycheck. Isaiah stepped between his mother and the paper. Graham smiled. Move. Isaiah did not. The Ferrari idled behind them, warm now, beautiful and wounded. The click came again. This time, Lena Ortiz heard it. Her head turned so fast her name badge flashed under the light. Isaiah saw her hand hover near the locked cabinet beside the wall, the one with the old leather binder inside. Before she could speak, a slow voice came from the mezzanine above them. Graham. Everyone looked up. Nolan Reeves stood at the glass railing, one hand on the brass banister, his face unreadable. He had not saved Isaiah. Not yet. He had only heard enough to stop the room from breathing. Down on the marble floor, the tuning fork in Isaiah's fist gave one last faint vibration, and beneath the Ferrari's dashboard, something clicked again. The tuning fork had been on Isaiah Brooks's kitchen table that morning, lying beside a cracked mug, a half-empty bottle of pills, and an electric bill folded so many times the paper had gone soft at the creases. He tapped it once against the edge of the table, not hard, just enough to make the metal hum. The sound floated through the little apartment behind the laundromat, thin and clean, while the refrigerator clicked on and off like it was tired of trying. Isaiah closed his eyes and listened until the note faded. Then he wrote one word in the margin of his notebook, vibration. His mother, Marlene, stood at the stove in her gray housekeeping pants and white undershirt, making one egg stretch across two pieces of toast. She slid the better half onto Isaiah's plate without looking at him. He slid it back when she turned to get her coffee. Neither of them said anything. That was how love worked in that apartment. Quiet traits, small lies, empty stomachs protected by pride. Eat before school, Marlene said. I did. He had not. She knew he had not. She let him keep the lie because rent was due Friday. Her hours had been cut at the downtown hotel, and the new diabetes medication cost more than the old one. On the wall above the table hung an old photograph of Isaiah's grandfather, Elijah Brooks, standing beside the choir organ at Mount Zion Baptist. Elijah had been a janitor, a deacon, and the only man Isaiah ever knew who could fix a furnace by ear. He used to say every broken thing begged before it failed. Pipes begged. Motors begged. Human hearts begged, too, if somebody cared enough to hear them. When Isaiah was 10, the church organ died during a funeral. The repair company wanted $1,200 just to open the panel. Elijah brought Isaiah to the choir loft after midnight with a flashlight, a screwdriver, and that tuning fork. Do not force it, he whispered. Listen first. They found a loose contact behind a row of keys. The organ played the next morning. 3 months later, Elijah was gone, and the tuning fork became the only tool Isaiah never lent to anyone. He kept it wrapped in a blue handkerchief in his backpack, beside a notebook full of sketches no teacher had assigned. Old radios, bus fans, broken doorbells, a diagram of the laundromat dryer that shook only when 2 machines ran at once. He did not call himself gifted. Gifted children had lab kits, sponsors, parents who could drive them to competitions in clean cars. Isaiah had been invited once to a regional robotics showcase, then quietly dropped when the team fees came due. The coach said, maybe next year. Isaiah smiled like it did not cut him. That night, he repaired a neighbor's walker brake for free because Mrs. Alvarez needed it to get to dialysis. If you have ever been judged by what you could not afford before anyone saw what you could do, then you know why Isaiah learned to keep his head down and his ears open. A buzz came from Marlene's phone. She wiped her hands on a towel and read the message twice. Her shoulders lowered before she even spoke. They need me at Reeves tonight. Isaiah looked up. The car place. The conservatory, she corrected, because rich people liked long names for places where other people clean floors. Private preview. Extra hours. She tried to sound grateful. Extra hours meant medicine. It also meant she would stand until midnight on swollen feet, while people in tailored clothes looked through her instead of at her. Isaiah noticed the pill bottle still on the table. You forgot these yesterday. I will take them when I get back. You said that last time. Marlene gave him a tired look, not angry, just worn thin. Baby, I cannot carry everything in my pockets while I am working. Isaiah picked up the bottle and slipped it into the front pouch of his backpack with the tuning fork. Then I will bring it after school. No, the word came too fast. She softened it. That place is not for wandering. He almost smiled. I'm not wandering. I am delivering medicine. She wanted to argue, but a second message arrived. Report through service entrance by 6. Black shoes. No guests in staff areas. Failure to comply may affect contract renewal. Marlene turned the screen face down like it had insulted her in her own home. Isaiah looked at the phone, then at the photograph of his grandfather, then at the tuning fork wrapped in blue cloth. The refrigerator clicked again. This time, he heard the delay before the motor caught. He heard everything. Marlene grabbed her keys, kissed the top of his head, and whispered, "Promise me you will stay out of sight." Isaiah nodded because he loved her. But when the apartment door closed behind her, the pill bottle was still in his backpack. The conservatory address was still glowing on her phone, and the old tuning fork gave one soft ring, as if it already knew he would have to walk into a room where people like Graham Holt were waiting. The service entrance scanner rejected Isaiah's school ID with a flat red beep, and the guard behind the desk looked at his hoodie before he looked at his face. Staff only, the guard said. Isaiah held the pill bottle in one hand and his backpack strap in the other. Through the glass wall behind the security desk, he could see the bright side of Reeves' Motor Conservatory, where guests were already arriving beneath chandeliers shaped like silver wheels. On this side, the hallway smelled like floor wax, wet mop cotton, and microwave dinners. My mother works here, Isaiah said. Marlene Brooks. Housekeeping. She forgot her medicine. The guard leaned back in his chair and glanced at the bottle like it might be a trick. People say things. 2 caterers in black jackets rolled a cart of champagne past them. One of them looked at Isaiah, then at the red light on the scanner, and kept moving. Nobody asked why a boy would ride 2 buses across town with medicine unless someone really needed it. Nobody asked why his hands were clean but cracked around the knuckles, why his backpack had a frayed zipper held together with a paperclip, why he stood so still even after being treated like a problem. The guard tapped his radio. I have a minor at service. Says he belongs to housekeeping. Belongs. The word sat in the hallway like gum on a polished floor. Isaiah lowered his eyes, not because he was ashamed, but because he had learned that looking too long made some people reach for authority faster. Behind him, the service door opened again. A young dishwasher came in carrying 2 crates of glassware stacked too high. The top crate slipped. Isaiah moved before the guard did. He caught the side of it with his elbow, steadying the whole stack against the wall. One glass still rolled free, spinning toward the edge of the cart. Isaiah caught it by the stem without a sound. The dishwasher stared at him. Thanks, man. Isaiah nodded and set the glass back in place. The guard saw it. He still did not say thank you. He only picked up a clipboard and flipped through the temporary access list. Brooks, Marlene. Contract crew. Lower level. Not authorized for guest floor. I'm not going to the guest floor. That is what everyone says. The radio crackled before Isaiah could answer. A woman's voice came through, clipped and tired. Let the kid in. He is Marlene's, but he stays in service corridors. Mr. Holt is strict tonight. The guard opened a drawer and pulled out a yellow visitor sticker. He wrote guest in thick black marker, then paused, crossed it out, and wrote delivery instead. The sticker peeled badly when he slapped it onto Isaiah's hoodie. If anyone asks, you're dropping something off and leaving. Isaiah looked at the crooked word on his chest. Delivery. Not son, not student, not person, just something moving through the back of a rich man's building. He touched the blue cloth inside his backpack, feeling the shape of the tuning fork beneath it, and breathed slowly until the heat in his face cooled. The service corridor led him past rooms the guests would never see. Metal shelves stacked with linen. A wall calendar marked with overtime shifts. A trash bin full of flower stems cut from arrangements that probably cost more than his mother's medication. He passed an open maintenance closet and heard a soft rattle overhead. The air vent above the door was vibrating out of rhythm. Not dangerous, just loose. A screw had backed out near the corner. Isaiah stopped, pressed 2 fingers lightly against the vent, and the rattle vanished. The dishwasher, still pushing the cart behind him, noticed. How did you know where to touch it? Isaiah shrugged. It was shaking from the left side. You fix stuff? Isaiah kept walking. Sometimes. At the end of the corridor, Marlene stood beside a cart of towels, her uniform already damp at the collar. Relief crossed her face when she saw the pill bottle. Then fear followed it just as fast. She pulled him into the shadow near the linen room. I told you not to come inside. You needed these. He placed a bottle in her palm. She closed her fingers around it, like it was both help and danger. Mr. Holt is in a mood. They're showing Mr. Reeves the Ferrari tonight, and everybody is acting like the president is coming. A staff supervisor passed by without slowing. Marlene, after you finish the glass rail, bathrooms by the preview hall. And keep your son out of sight. She said something like a spill that needed cleaning. Marlene answered, yes, ma'am, with the kind of calm that cost something. Isaiah watched his mother turn back to the cart. She did not bend. She did not argue. She simply folded one towel, then another, each edge clean, each corner exact, as if no one could take pride from her unless she handed it over. From beyond the service door came a low mechanical growl. The Ferrari. Isaiah felt it in his ribs before he heard it clearly. 12 cylinders, smooth at first, then a tiny stumble hiding under the sound like a skipped heartbeat. His hand moved to the tuning fork in his backpack. On the wall beside the door, a security camera tilted, found him, and held. Then the door opened, warm light spilled into the corridor, and a man in a tailored navy suit looked straight at Isaiah's yellow sticker. Who let delivery stand this close to the preview hall? The man in the tailored navy suit was Graham Holt, and he looked at Isaiah's yellow sticker as if it had left a stain on the air. Delivery does not stand near the preview hall, he said. The service door rested open behind him, spilling warm gold light across Isaiah's sneakers and Marlene's cleaning cart. Inside, the Ferrari sat under white spotlights, its red hood glowing like a warning. Isaiah kept the pill bottle low at his side. I was giving my mother her medicine. Graham's eyes moved to Marlene, then to the towel in her hand, then back to Isaiah. Then you have done your task. He reached for the door. The Ferrari idled on the other side of the glass. Smooth, deep, expensive. Then came the stumble. A breath too short, a half beat missing. Not from the exhaust, not from the open rear vents. Isaiah's head turned before he could stop it. Graham noticed. Do not look at that car like you understand it. Isaiah said nothing. He only listened. The sound came again, buried beneath the polished growl. A tiny click before the miss. A dry little snap, like a light switch behind a wall. His thumb pressed against the blue cloth inside his backpack, finding the shape of the tuning fork. Not to use it, just to steady himself. Mount Zion's old organ had made a sound like that once, right before the low keys died. Not the same problem, not the same machine, but the same kind of lie. Everyone blamed the pipes. The fault had been hidden behind the panel. Isaiah's eyes moved along the Ferrari's windshield, past the polished steering wheel, down to the shadow under the dashboard. For 1 second, the overhead light caught something under the trim. A thread of faded blue cloth wrapped around an old wire. Then it vanished as the door shifted. It is not coming from where they're standing, Isaiah said softly. Marlene's face tightened. Isaiah. Graham stopped closing the door. Excuse me? Isaiah looked at him, then lowered his eyes again, careful, respectful, but not empty. The sound. They're listening at the back. But the click is forward. Under the dash. The corridor went still. The dishwasher with the glass card had not left. Marcus Bell, the security guard from the desk, had followed halfway down the hall and now stood with one hand near his radio. A caterer holding a tray of folded napkins paused just long enough for one napkin to slide off and land on the floor. Nobody laughed yet. They were waiting for Graham to tell them what kind of silence this was allowed to be. Graham gave them permission with a sharp smile. A schoolboy hears a vintage Ferrari through a service door, and now he is an electrical consultant. The caterer looked away. Marcus exhaled through his nose. Marlene bent to pick up the fallen napkin, but Isaiah reached it first and placed it back on the tray without making the caterer feel small. Graham saw that too, and somehow it made him angrier. You people mistake politeness for permission, he said. This building has rules. Yes, sir, Isaiah said. Graham blinked. The calm bothered him more than an argument would have. Then follow them. He turned toward Marlene. Your son leaves now, or I mark this as a contract violation. Marlene's fingers closed around the pill bottle. Her voice stayed quiet. He will go. Isaiah nodded once. He took one step back. Then the Ferrari stumbled again, louder this time because the service door was still open. Inside the preview hall, a technician in a white jacket frowned at a tablet. Another man leaned over the engine bay with a penlight. Neither of them looked toward the dashboard. Isaiah did. He did not mean to speak again. He knew what one more sentence could cost his mother. But the sound had a pattern now. Click. Half beat. Recover. Click. Half beat. Recover. His notebook was in his backpack. His hand moved before he thought, pulling it halfway open. On the top page was a sketch of the laundromat dryer vent, 2 arrows, a vibration mark in the corner. Graham's eyes caught the drawings. What is that? Isaiah zipped the backpack fast. Too fast. Almost guilty. Nothing. Graham stepped closer. Open it. Marlene moved between them. Mr. Holt, please. He's a child. Then he should stop behaving like a saboteur. The word hit the corridor hard. Saboteur. Marcus's hand found his radio. The technician inside the hall glanced over. A guest near the glass turned, champagne glass hovering at her lips. Isaiah felt every eye settle on him again, not with curiosity now, but suspicion. Graham held out his hand. The notebook. Isaiah did not move. His thumb pressed into the blue cloth around the tuning fork until the metal edge bit softly into his palm. He could hand over the notebook and protect his mother for the next 5 minutes, or refuse and make Graham worse. Before he could choose, the Ferrari gave one more click, and the technician's tablet flashed red through the open door. Graham saw Isaiah notice it. That was enough. His smile vanished. Marcus, he said, without taking his eyes off the boy. Escort him out before he decides to touch something he cannot pay for. Marcus stepped forward. The service corridor seemed to narrow around Isaiah. Behind Graham, the dashboard light flickered once, then went dark. Marcus Bell stepped forward, but Graham Holt moved first. He reached past Marlene and snatched the edge of Isaiah's backpack like it was evidence pulled from a crime scene. No more little drawings. No more guessing games. You are done. The zipper rasped under his fingers. Isaiah caught the strap with one hand, not pulling hard, only holding what belonged to him. Please do not take that. Graham's eyes sharpened. Please. He turned the word toward the corridor, toward the caterers, the technician, the guard, the guests beginning to gather behind the glass. Now he has manners. A few people laughed because Graham laughed first. Marlene stepped closer. Mr. Holt, he brought my medicine. That is all. Then explain why he is studying my vehicle through an open door. Graham pointed toward the preview hall, where the Ferrari's red paint shone under the lights and the diagnostic tablets still glowed, with a warning that one technician quickly tried to block with his body. Explain why he is making claims about a car he has no authorization to approach, no training to inspect, and no business speaking about in front of clients. Isaiah's hand stayed on the backpack. Inside, wrapped in blue cloth, the tuning fork pressed against his notebook. It felt suddenly small, breakable. Graham looked at Marcus. Search the bag. Marcus hesitated. Not long. Just enough for the hesitation to be seen. Mr. Holt, he is a minor. He is in a restricted restoration area during a private event involving an irreplaceable asset. Graham's voice became smoother, more dangerous. Do you want a name in the report too? Marcus's jaw moved once. He did not answer. Marlene's face lost color. Report. Graham reached to the work table near the door, grabbed the incident form he had threatened earlier, and slapped it against the wall with 2 fingers. Unauthorized access. Interference with a restoration demonstration. Possible tampering. The last word made the corridor breathe differently. Tampering sounded official. It sounded expensive. It sounded like the kind of word that could take a woman's job before anyone asked for the truth. Isaiah spoke quietly. I did not touch the car. You keep saying that like anyone here is required to believe you. Graham leaned close enough that Isaiah could see the tiny gold gear pin on his lapel. People like you wander into rooms like this and think curiosity is a credential. The caterer looked down. The dishwasher's hands tightened around the card handle. One guest behind the glass lifted a phone, then another. Their screens caught Isaiah's yellow delivery sticker and held it there. Marlene reached for the backpack. Isaiah, give it to me. He looked at her. She was not asking because Graham was right. She was asking because fear had a calendar, a rent date, a medicine cost, a supervisor who could stop calling. Isaiah let the strap loosen. Graham took the bag and dropped it onto the metal work table. The sound was heavy. Wrong. He unzipped it with 2 sharp pulls. A pencil rolled out first, then the notebook, then the blue cloth. The tuning fork slipped free and landed beside the incident form. It gave 1 faint ring. Graham picked it up between 2 fingers and held it high enough for the guest to see. What is this, your magic wand? The laugh that followed was louder this time. Isaiah's face did not change, but his hands closed at his sides. It was my grandfather's. For the first time, his voice carried something more than caution. Graham smiled as if he had found the soft spot. Then your grandfather should have taught you the difference between a church repair box and a multi-million-dollar restoration facility. Marlene's lips parted, but no sound came. Isaiah took 1 step forward. Marcus moved with him, not touching him yet, but close enough to make the warning clear. Graham set the tuning fork on top of the glass display cabinet beside the service door. Not gently. Metal kissed glass with a hard little tick. There. Evidence table. The word made another ripple through the watchers. Isaiah's eyes flicked to the cabinet. Inside, under a narrow strip of museum light, sat an old leather binder he had not noticed before. Its corners were worn. Its brass clasp was dark with age. On the spine, half hidden behind a folded white inventory tag, were faded silver letters, C. Reeves. Graham saw Isaiah looking and moved quickly, blocking the glass with his body. Eyes front. The Ferrari stumbled again beyond the door. This time the tuning fork answered from the top of the cabinet. Not loudly, just a thin, trembling hum. One technician stopped pretending to read the tablet. Lena Ortiz, standing just inside the preview hall, turned toward the sound. Graham heard the hum too. His face tightened. He snatched the tuning fork off the cabinet and shoved it toward Marcus. Bag it, then remove him. But as Marcus reached for it, the vibration shook the white inventory tag loose. It slid down the glass, exposing the rest of the silver letters on the binder's spine. Clara Reeves, Rally Notes. Nolan Reeves's name had not been spoken yet, but everyone in that building knew Clara's. Behind the glass, the guests went quiet enough to hear the Ferrari click 1 more time. The white inventory tag slid down the glass like a loose bandage, and the faded silver letters beneath it caught the museum light. Clara Reeves, Rally Notes. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. The Ferrari kept idling beyond the service door, beautiful and sick, while Isaiah's tuning fork sat in Marcus Bell's open hand, still giving off a tiny tremble no one wanted to admit they heard. Graham Holt moved first. He stepped in front of the cabinet and pressed the tag back over the name with 2 fingers. Old archive material, he said. Not relevant. His voice was too quick. Too clean. Isaiah noticed. Lena Ortiz noticed too. Her eyes went from the binder to Graham's hand, then to the diagnostic tablet inside the preview hall, where the red warning had disappeared behind a technician's shoulder. Marlene stood beside Isaiah, holding her pill bottle against her chest like it was the only proof that he had come there for a decent reason. "Sir," Isaiah said, quiet enough that only the corridor heard him, "please do not put my grandfather's tuning fork in a bag." Graham turned slowly. "Your grandfather is not on tonight's access list." A few guests behind the glass laughed, but not as many as before. Some were staring at the binder now, not because they understood it, because Graham clearly did not want them to. Marcus looked at the tuning fork in his palm. It was not expensive. It was scratched, old, almost plain, but Isaiah looked at it like Graham had ordered him to throw away a person. "It is not evidence," Isaiah said. "It is mine. Everything in this corridor is evidence if I say it is," Graham replied. That was the moment the crowd began to split. One collector in a velvet jacket nodded along, eager to believe the man with the gold gear pin. A woman near the champagne table lowered her phone and frowned. The dishwasher kept both hands on the cart, but leaned slightly forward, watching Marcus. Lena wiped her palms on her white jacket and took one step toward the glass cabinet before stopping herself. "What do you think that old binder was hiding, and why would a restoration director be so afraid of people seeing a name on its spine?" Graham reached for the cabinet key, clipped to his belt. Not to open it, to remove it. He detached the key ring and slipped it into his pocket. "This cabinet is closed for the evening." Isaiah's eyes stayed on the binder. The leather was cracked at the corners. One brass clasp was bent. Beside the title, half hidden by the tag, was a small painted mark, a blue stripe like the cloth around the old wire beneath the Ferrari's dash. Not the same thing, maybe nothing. But Isaiah had learned that old machines carried habits from old hands. People left themselves in what they fixed. "That binder belongs to the car," he said. Graham's smile thinned. "The car belongs to Mr. Reeves. The archive belongs to this institution. You belong outside." Marlene flinched. Isaiah did not. He only reached toward Marcus, palm up, asking for the tuning fork back without grabbing it. Marcus hesitated again. His radio gave a soft burst of static. Then the security desk voice came through. "Marcus, status?" He did not answer right away. Graham snapped. "Status is removal." "Mr. Holt," Lena said, her voice small but clear. Clara Reeves did keep handwritten rally notes. "I saw the archive index during cataloging." Graham turned on her. "And did the archive index ask for your opinion?" Lena's face went red. She looked down, but not before Isaiah saw the shame in her eyes. Not guilt. Shame. The kind good people feel when they've been quiet too long. Inside the preview hall, the Ferrari stumbled again. The sound was softer now, but the timing was exact. Click. Mississippi recover. The tuning fork answered in Marcus's palm with a thin, sympathetic hum. This time, even the woman with the phone heard it. Her mouth opened slightly. Graham heard it too, and anger flashed across his face. He grabbed the tuning fork from Marcus and set it on the metal edge of the work table, away from the cabinet. Enough of the parlor trick. Metal struck metal. The ring was sharper this time, bright enough to make Isaiah close his eyes for half a breath. When he opened them, the binder's tag had loosened again. Not all the way. Just enough to reveal one more line written beneath Clara's name in faded pencil. Auxiliary circuit notes. Isaiah did not know what it meant yet. He only knew Graham saw it and stepped forward too fast. Then a voice came from the mezzanine above the preview hall, low, older, and suddenly unsteady. "Who cover my wife's name?" Nolan Reeves stood at the glass rail, looking down at the cabinet, not at the Ferrari. His hand gripped the brass banister until his knuckles paled. Graham's face changed for one small second, and in that second Isaiah saw something worse than anger. He saw fear. Nolan started down the stairs, each step slow and heavy. "No one touches that binder," he said. "Not until I am standing beside it." Isaiah's fingers tightened around the blue cloth before he realized Marcus had handed the tuning fork back. Nolan Reeves's words still hung above the preview hall. "No one touches that binder." The old man came down the stairs slowly, one hand sliding along the brass rail, his eyes fixed on the name Clara Reeves, as if the letters could bruise him. Isaiah lowered his gaze. He knew that look. He had seen it on his mother's face the day they packed his grandfather's tools into a cardboard box, keeping only the tuning fork because everything else had to be sold. Some objects were not valuable because they were rare. They were valuable because they were the last place a voice could still live. Nolan reached the corridor, and the rich guests parted for him without being asked. Graham stepped aside, but only half an inch, still trying to own the air. "Mr. Reeves, this is a misunderstanding," he said. Old catalog material was exposed during an unauthorized disturbance. Nolan did not look at him. He looked at the binder through the glass. "Clara hated being cataloged," he said quietly. She said men filed away anything they could not understand. The hallway softened. Not enough to free Isaiah. Enough to make a few people stop smiling. Nolan's hand lifted toward the cabinet, then stopped before touching it. For a second, the billionaire was not a billionaire. He was a widower standing in front of a locked case, afraid of what grief might do if the glass opened. Isaiah felt the tuning fork in his palm and remembered Mount Zion after the funeral, the sanctuary empty, the choir robes hanging still. His grandfather's work jacket had smelled like dust, machine oil, and peppermint candy. Elijah Brooks had never called himself a mechanic. He said he was a listener. When something broke, he did not hit it first. He waited. He put one hand on the housing, one ear near the sound, and let the broken thing tell the truth in its own language. The night before he died, he had pressed the tuning fork into Isaiah's hand and said, "Never let people make you ashamed of hearing what they missed." Isaiah had failed at that for years. He had hidden the notebook after the robotics coach looked at his homemade parts and said the judges would expect cleaner work. He had stopped raising his hand when teachers praised expensive kits and ignored repaired ones. He had learned to make himself useful, then invisible. But he had never learned how to hear a wrong sound and pretend it was right. The Ferrari clicked again behind the glass. Isaiah's shoulders tensed. Nolan heard only the engine stumble. Graham heard only a threat to his control. Isaiah heard a memory knocking from behind a panel, patient and small. "May I have my notebook back?" Isaiah asked. He kept his voice low, not demanding, not pleading. "I only want to write down the timing." Graham gave a short laugh. "Listen to him. Timing." He turned toward the guests. "A child with a souvenir fork wants to create a technical record for a car he has never touched." Marlene's eyes lowered, but her hand found Isaiah's sleeve. She did not pull him back this time. She only held on. Nolan finally turned from the cabinet. His gaze moved to Isaiah's yellow delivery sticker, then to the tuning fork, then to Marlene's gray uniform. Something in his face changed. Not pity, not yet trust, just recognition of a cruelty he had almost walked past. "Why is this bag on my work table?" he asked. Graham's smile tightened. "Because I am protecting your asset." From a boy delivering medicine to his mother. The question landed softly, which made it worse. The corridor went still again. Marcus looked at the floor. Lena Ortiz swallowed. Graham felt the room leaning away from him, and he reached for the only weapon he still had. Certainty. "Mr. Reeves, with respect, emotion is exactly how mistakes happen around valuable machines." He picked up the incident form and held it out to Marlene. "Sign this, and we return to the demonstration. The vehicle is stable. I will prove it in front of everyone." Isaiah looked past him to the Ferrari. The cabin lights were still cool. The sound had not warmed into its full pattern yet. Graham knew that, or thought no one else did. Then his eyes dropped to the tuning fork in Isaiah's hand. He reached out and took it before Isaiah could close his fingers around it. Not violently. Worse, casually, as if even the boy's last piece of dignity could be handled like property. Graham laid the tuning fork across the incident form and pinned it there beneath his palm. "No more props," he said. He placed the pen in Marlene's hand and pointed toward the preview hall. "Start the car for the guests. Let them see who actually understands it." The technician inside hesitated, then reached for the controls. The Ferrari's engine rose, smooth and proud, and Graham smiled like the night belonged to him again. Graham Holt raised one hand toward the preview hall like a conductor taking back an orchestra. "Begin the demonstration," he ordered. The technician inside obeyed, and the Ferrari's engine rose under the spotlights, smooth, rich, almost royal. Graham turned to the guests before the sound had time to betray him, his palms still pinning Isaiah's tuning fork across the incident form. "Ladies and gentlemen, you're hearing what expertise sounds like." A relieved murmur moved through the room. A few people smiled. One collector clapped twice, careful and expensive. The diagnostic tablet glowed green behind the windshield, and Graham pointed at it as if it were a judge handing down a verdict. "Stable ignition. Stable response. No interference. No misteri." Isaiah stood in the service corridor with a yellow delivery sticker crooked on his chest, his notebook still on the metal work table, his grandfather's tuning fork trapped beneath Graham's hand. He did not move toward it. He did not argue. He only watched the small temperature bar at the bottom of the tablet. It had barely started climbing. The car had not warmed enough for the truth to speak. Marlene knew his face too well. She saw him see something. She also saw Graham see him seeing it. Graham smiled wider. "Mr. Reeves," he said, turning toward Nolan with perfect respect, "this is why we do not allow untrained observers to invent problems during a public event." Nolan stood beside the glass cabinet, one hand near the locked binder, his eyes still shadowed by Claire's name. He did not defend Graham. He did not defend Isaiah either. Grief had slowed him, and Graham used that pause like a weapon. "Mrs. Brooks," Graham said, and every head shifted toward Marlene. He picked up the incident form, sliding the tuning fork with it like the boy's memory had become part of the accusation. "You will sign that your son entered a restricted restoration area, disrupted a client demonstration, and created a false concern involving a protected vehicle." Marlene's hand trembled when the pen touched her fingers. The room seemed to grow larger around her, all glass, money, and silence. Isaiah took one step. Marcus Bell shifted in front of him. Not rough, not cruel, just enough to make the line clear. "Ma'am," Marcus said softly, almost apologetic, "please do what he says." The words hurt because they were gentle. Graham leaned close to Isaiah's ear, but loud enough for the nearest guest to hear. "This is what happens when children mistake curiosity for permission." Behind the glass, a man in a velvet jacket laughed again. Another guest lifted his phone higher, catching Marlene with the pen, Isaiah with the sticker, and the Ferrari purring like Graham had already won. Lena Ortiz stood near the technician station with her arms folded tight. Her eyes kept flicking to the temperature bar, then to the cabinet, then to the tuning fork beneath Graham's palm. She knew something did not fit, but knowing and speaking were different things in a room owned by men like Graham Holt. "The notebook, too," Graham said suddenly. He flipped open Isaiah's notebook with one finger, barely glancing before making a face. "Sketches, arrows, childish vibration marks." He held a page up for the guest to see. "This is the technical foundation of tonight's interruption." A few people chuckled. Isaiah's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice low. "Please do not tear it." Graham looked delighted by the restraint. "I would not waste the effort." He dropped the notebook beside the incident form. The pages spread open, one sketch half covered by Marlene's shaking hand. "Sign, Mrs. Brooks. Then your son will apologize to my staff, return through the service exit, and never enter this institution again." Marlene looked at Isaiah. In her eyes, he saw the rent due Friday, the medicine in her pocket, the years she had spent swallowing words so he could have a chance to use his. Isaiah gave the smallest shake of his head, not because he wanted her job to vanish, because he could not let her sign a lie about him. Graham saw that too. His voice sharpened. "If she refuses, I call this deliberate interference and remove both of you from the contract list tonight." The crowd shifted. Some looked away. Some kept recording. The Ferrari kept running, still clean, still smooth, still helping Graham lie. Then, at the bottom of the diagnostic tablet, one tiny red segment blinked beside the rising cabin temperature. Lena saw it. Isaiah saw it. Graham did not. Graham lifted the tuning fork by its dull handle and held it up one last time. "Since this prop matters so much, we will keep it with the rest of the disruption." He reached toward Marcus. "Clear pouch." Marcus handed him one from the security folder, his eyes lowered. Graham slid the tuning fork inside, but left the top unsealed, then laid it across the incident form like a paperweight over Marlene's name. On your knees? No, I'm not that cruel. Standing will do. Apologize where everyone can hear you. As Isaiah lifted his eyes, the red segment blinked again. Say it clearly, Graham Holt said, pushing the incident form closer to Isaiah's chest. Tell these people you made it up. The words sliced through the preview hall louder than the Ferrari. Graham had pulled Isaiah and Marlene fully into the glass room now. Not as guests, not as witnesses, but as an example. The red velvet rope had been moved behind them. Marcus Bell stood near the service door. The guests formed a loose half circle around the car, phones raised, eyes hungry and uncomfortable. Isaiah's yellow delivery sticker had started to peel at one corner. Graham pointed to it. You walked in wearing that, and somehow believed you had the right to question my team. Marlene still held the pen. The incident form trembled beneath her fingers. Mr. Holt, she whispered, please. He is 16. Old enough to embarrass himself, Graham said. Old enough to apologize. He turned to the guests. We will not allow rumor, panic, or amateur speculation to contaminate a professional restoration event. Contaminate. The word made Marlene blink, as if something had struck her. Isaiah looked at the tuning fork. Graham had placed it inside a clear security pouch, unsealed, resting beside the notebook and the form. The blue cloth lay half out of the bag like a small flag, surrendering. Isaiah wanted to reach for it. He did not. The Ferrari idled behind Graham, still smooth enough to make him confident. The green tablet glowed inside the windshield. Only the tiny red segment at the bottom blinked again, then disappeared. Lena Ortiz saw it and took one step forward. Graham caught her movement without looking. Lena, he said, soft and sharp. Return to your station. She stopped. Her mouth closed. Nolan Reeves stood beside the glass cabinet where Clara's binder waited behind the locked door. His face had gone still in that dangerous way grief sometimes becomes silence. He was watching Isaiah now, but he had not intervened. Not yet. Graham used the pause to tighten the trap. He picked up a small wireless microphone from the presentation table and held it toward Isaiah. Go ahead. One sentence. I was wrong. Interrupta trainat professionals. I apologize. That is all. A child near the back, the son of one of the caterers, clutched his mother's sleeve. Mom, why does he have to say that? The mother hushed him quickly, eyes frightened. But the question had already moved through the room. A few guests looked down. The man in the velvet jacket rolled his eyes. Graham smiled like the boy had proven his point. Because actions have consequences. Isaiah finally spoke. His voice was calm, but the room leaned in to hear it. I can apologize for stepping too close. Graham's smile widened. Good, but I cannot say I heard nothing. The air changed. Not enough for victory. Enough for danger. Graham's face hardened. Then your mother signs for you. He grabbed the incident form, placed it flat on the Ferrari's display podium, and pressed the tuning fork pouch across the bottom line like a paperweight. Mrs. Brooks, sign here. Acknowledge that your son created a false technical claim and caused a disruption. If you refuse, your contract ends tonight. Marlene stared at the paper. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Isaiah turned to her. Mom. She looked at him with eyes full of rent, medicine, bus fare, and every hour she had ever worked invisible so he could stand upright. I am sorry, she whispered. No, Isaiah said. Not loud, just final. Graham leaned close to him. You do not get to savor with pride. He snapped his fingers at Marcus. Seal the pouch. Remove the boy after he apologizes, or remove both of them if he does not. Marcus reached for the clear bag. His hand slowed when the tuning fork gave a faint ring against the plastic. At the same moment, the Ferrari made the smallest click yet, followed by a stumble that slipped under the engine note like a skipped breath. Isaiah's eyes went to the dashboard. Lena's eyes went there too. Graham lifted the microphone higher, forcing it toward Isaiah's mouth. Last chance. The tablet inside the car blinked red again. This time the warning did not vanish. A single line appeared at the bottom of the screen, too small for the guest to read, but bright enough for every phone camera to catch. Intermittent drop detected. The room began to quiet. Then the Ferrari clicked one more time, and even Graham heard where it came from. The tablet beeped once, sharp and lonely, and the red line stayed on the screen. Intermittent drop detected. The words were small, but the silence they made was not. Graham Holt's microphone hovered inches from Isaiah's mouth, frozen there like his hand had forgotten what it was supposed to do. The Ferrari kept running under the white lights, but now every ear in the room had changed direction. The laughter stopped first, then the whispers, then the soft clicking of phone cameras. Even the child at the back stopped pulling at his mother's sleeve. Graham recovered with a tight smile. "A transit reading," he said. "Old sensors do that." He turned toward the technician. "Clear it." The technician's finger moved toward the tablet, but Lena Ortiz stepped in front of him. Not far, just enough. "Wait." One word, barely louder than the engine. Graham's head snapped toward her. "Excuse me." Lena swallowed. Her eyes moved to Isaiah, then to the dashboard, then back to the screen. It appeared after the click. Graham laughed once, but the sound had no body left in it. "You are basing your judgment on a sound heard by a boy in a delivery sticker?" Isaiah did not answer. His eyes stayed on the tablet. The red line pulsed again. Graham reached for control the way a drowning man reaches for air. Everyone remained calm. "There is no malfunction. This vehicle has passed every authorized inspection conducted under my supervision." Nolan Reeves stepped away from the cabinet. "Then why did the warning appear when he said it would?" The question was quiet. It did not accuse. That made it worse. Graham turned, already smoothing his face. "Mr. Reeves, with respect, a child guessed during a live demonstration. Guessing does not become expertise because a light blinks." Isaiah looked at the clear pouch on the podium. Inside it, his tuning fork rested against the blue cloth, trapped under Graham's accusation. Beside it lay his open notebook, the pages bent but not torn. One sketch showed a line of vibration marks, little arrows drawn beside time intervals. He did not reach for it. He only said, "I asked for the room to be quiet for 10 seconds. Graham's eyes narrowed. "No," Nolan said, "yes." The room obeyed Nolan before Graham could stop it. The technician lowered the presentation music. Someone killed the champagne station lights by mistake, and the hall dimmed just enough for the dashboard glow to sharpen. The Ferrari idled. Smooth. Proud. Then came the click. Small. Dry. Forward. Under the dash. Half a second later, the engine stumbled. Not badly. Not dramatically. Just enough for the rich sound to trip over itself and recover. A woman near the front lowered her phone. Marcus Bell's hand dropped from his radio. The child whispered, "It did it." No one hushed him this time. Graham's lips parted, but nothing came out. Isaiah breathed once slow. "It happens before the miss," he said. "Not after." Graham found his voice. "That proves nothing." "Then let the microphone hear it," Isaiah said. Not a challenge. Not a performance. A request. Nolan looked at Lena. She moved without waiting for Graham's approval, unclipping the small presentation microphone from the stand and placing it near the lower dashboard, outside the car, touching nothing that required permission. The speaker system gave a soft pop. The hall listened. If you were in that room, who would you watch now? The boy who heard it, the expert who denied it, or the billionaire who was starting to understand what had been ignored? The click came through the speakers like a pin dropping inside a church. Then the engine stumbled again. The red warning returned. This time larger. This time with a second line beneath it. Source not verified. Graham lunged toward the tablet. "Shut that off." Nolan's voice cut across the room. "Do not touch it." Graham stopped with his hand inches from the screen. The command was not loud, but every guest heard the change in ownership. This was no longer Graham's demonstration. It was Nolan Reeves's car, Clara Reeves's binder, Isaiah's sound, and a room full of people who had recorded too much to pretend they had not seen it. Lena looked at Isaiah as if she were seeing him for the first time. "How did you know it was forward?" Isaiah's fingers closed around the edge of his notebook. He did not smile. He did not look at Graham. "Because the engine is reacting to the click," he said. "The engine is not making it." The words landed softly, but Graham went pale around the mouth. Nolan turned to the locked cabinet. The old leather binder waited behind the glass, Clara's name no longer covered. "Open it," he said. Graham whispered, "Mr. Reeves, I strongly advise against that." Nolan held out his hand. "That archive key belongs to my collection." Graham did not move. Then Marcus Bell stepped closer, not threatening, just present. The room watched Graham reach into his pocket, remove the key ring he had hidden there, and place it on the glass cabinet with a small, defeated click. Lena picked up the key. The brass clasp gave a tired little snap. As the binder opened, a faded Polaroid slid halfway out from between the first two pages. The faded Polaroid slid halfway out of the binder and stopped with Clara Reeves's smiling face caught in the museum light. She was kneeling inside the Ferrari decades earlier, one sleeve rolled up, one hand tucked beneath the dashboard. Around two wires near her wrist was the same faded blue cloth Isaiah had seen through the service door. The room did not breathe. Nolan reached for the photograph like it might break if he touched it wrong. On the white border, written in Clara's slanted handwriting, were 6 words. Auxiliary cutoff, blue wrap, do not remove. Lena Ortiz read them aloud, and Graham Holt's face lost its color one shade at a time. "That is not decoration," Isaiah said softly. "That is a marker." Graham snapped too fast. "A historical note." Nothing more. Nolan looked at him. "Then why did you cover her name?" The first punch landed clean. Graham opened his mouth, but no answer came. Lena turned the first page of the binder. Old paper whispered under her fingers. There were rally dates, handwritten adjustments, small diagrams, notes about heat, vibration, and a hidden auxiliary circuit Clara had used during endurance events. Nothing looked like a modern service manual. It looked human, careful, loved. Isaiah did not touch the binder. He stood with his hands at his sides, the yellow delivery sticker still peeling from his hoodie, the clear pouch with his tuning fork lying on the podium beside the incident form that had nearly ruined his mother. Lena looked from the page to the dashboard. "Mr. Reeves," she said, voice unsteady. "This matches the exact place he pointed to." Graham lifted a hand. "No one is opening that panel during a public event." Nolan's eye stayed on him. "You were happy to humiliate a child during one." The second punch hit harder. A few guests looked down. The man in the velvet jacket stopped recording Isaiah and turned his phone toward Graham. Marcus Bell stepped away from the service door, not blocking Isaiah now, only watching Graham with a different face. Nolan gave Lena a single nod. She did not dismantle the car. She used a small inspection light, an angled mirror from the technician station, careful and visible, so every camera could see she touched nothing reckless. The light slipped onto the lower dash. A strip of old blue cloth appeared, then a small hidden switch body, then a cracked lead resting too close to a metal bracket. The tablet blinked red again. Click. Mississippi recover. Lena froze. There it is. Isaiah closed his eyes for half a second. Not victory. Relief. The broken thing had finally been allowed to tell the truth. Graham lunged for the microphone. That still does not prove causation. Isaiah opened his eyes. No, the repeat does. He nodded toward the dashboard. When that contact shifts, the warning returns. When it rests, the engine recovers. The engine is not sick. It is being interrupted. He sat like a boy reading weather, calm and exact. Not a boast, a fact. Lena tested the movement without force, just enough to show the pattern. Click. The red line appeared. Stillness. The line faded. The Ferrari's idle smoothed. The room went so quiet the speaker hiss sounded loud. He was right, Lena said. The third punch was simple, and it broke the room open. Phones lowered from Isaiah and rose toward Graham. The guests who had laughed now stared at the floor. The dishwasher near the service corridor let out a breath he had been holding all night. Marlene covered her mouth with one hand, not because her son had one, but because he had stayed kind while people tried to make him small. Nolan turned the binder toward Graham. A service invoice was clipped behind Clara's notes. Full electrical inspection. Dashboard auxiliary circuit review. Graham Holt's initials sat at the bottom in black ink. Beside that section, in smaller print, was a technician note. Not accessed. Nolan read it once. Then again. You billed me for circuit you never opened. Graham's voice cracked. That was preliminary language. No, Isaiah said, quiet but clear. That was the place you refused to listen. Graham looked at him, then, really looked, as if the delivery sticker had vanished and a person had appeared in its place. Nolan picked up the clear pouch, opened it, and handed the tuning fork back to Isaiah. This belongs to him, he said. The apology belongs to your staff. Graham whispered, Mr. Reeves, we can discuss this privately. Nolan looked at the phones, the binder, the screen, and Marlene's in sign form. No, you made it public. He turned to Marcus. Lock the archive office. Secure every invoice, every service note, and every recording from tonight. Graham took one step back, and for the first time, no one moved aside for him. Marcus Bell's radio changed tone first. A low double chirp came through the room, followed by the security desk voice. Archive office access suspended. Recording backup in progress. The words were plain, almost boring, but Graham Holt looked at the ceiling speakers like they had betrayed him. Nolan Reeves did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Seal the cabinet. Copy every camera angle. No invoice leaves this building tonight. Marcus moved at once, not toward Isaiah this time, but toward the archive corridor Graham had tried to control. The guests watched the direction of power shift in silence. Phones that had been pointed at the boy in the delivery sticker now followed Graham's face. He seemed to feel each lens like heat. Mr. Reeves, Graham said, lowering his voice into something almost humble, this has gotten completely out of proportion. I was protecting the car. Nolan looked at the binder, the Polaroid, the tablet, the unsigned incident form, and finally at Marlene. No, he said. You were protecting yourself. Graham's lips parted. I did not know the boy had some unusual ear for mechanics. Isaiah's hand closed gently around the tuning fork. That sentence told the whole room what kind of apology Graham was offering. Not sorrow for cruelty. Not shame for accusing a child. Only regret that the child had been right. Marlene stood very still beside the podium, the pen still trapped between her fingers. Nolan noticed it. He took the incident form from beneath the notebook and turned it toward the room. This document is void. Paper tore once, clean down the middle, not as theater, but as correction. The sound made Marlene's shoulders loosen for the first time all night. Mrs. Brooks, Nolan said, your contract is not under review. His conduct is. He pointed at Graham. Graham looked around for someone to agree with him. The man in the velvet jacket lowered his eyes. A guest who had laughed earlier slipped his phone into his pocket like he wanted to disappear. Lena Ortiz opened a fresh evidence folder from the technician station and placed Clara's Polaroid inside a clear sleeve. Then she added a copy of the invoice, the technician note, and a printed still from the tablet warning. Her hand shook, but she did not stop. I want my earlier maintenance concern added too, she said. Her voice was thin, then stronger. I flagged the auxiliary system last month. It was dismissed. Graham turned on her. Lena. She looked up. No, I am done being quiet. That sentence moved through the staff like a door opening. The dishwasher near the service corridor raised his hand halfway, embarrassed by his own courage. He asked where the click came from before the warning, he said, nodding toward Isaiah. Before anybody else said it. Marcus returned with a sealed gray envelope marked tonight's recording backup. He placed it on the podium between Nolan and Graham. Archive office is locked. Exterior exits love. Security has the event footage. Graham's face tightened. You cannot hold me here. Nolan's answer was calm. No one is holding you. But you will leave without access to my car, my archive, or my records. He took Graham's gold gear pin from the edge of the work table where it had fallen during the confusion and set it beside the sealed envelope. Effective now. You are suspended pending an independent audit. Graham stared at the pin as if it had been part of his skin. After everything I have done for this collection? Nolan's eyes hardened. After everything Clara left for this collection. The room felt the difference. This was not revenge. This was stewardship. Isaiah bent to pick up his notebook, but Marcus got there first. For a moment, Isaiah froze. Then Marcus lifted it with both hands and offered it back carefully, as if the pages weighed more now. I'm sorry, Marcus said. I should have listened sooner. Isaiah took the notebook. You stopped before you made it worse. It was not forgiveness exactly. It was mercy with a boundary. Graham heard it, and somehow it humiliated him more than anger would have. Nolan turned to Marlene. You and your son should not have to walk out through the service corridor. Marlene blinked. Sir, come with me, Nolan said, looking toward the main hall where the red velvet rope still stood behind Isaiah like a line someone else had drawn. Both of you. The crowd parted, not loudly, not dramatically, but with a new kind of care. Isaiah held the tuning fork in one hand and his notebook in the other. At the edge of the opening, the caterer's young son looked up at him and whispered, Can machines really tell the truth? Isaiah stopped, and the whole room waited for his answer. The room was quieter now, not empty, but changed. Phones lowered one by one. The Ferrari rested under the lights with its truth finally out in the open, and Isaiah stood at the edge of the parted crowd with his notebook in one hand and his grandfather's tuning fork in the other. The caterer's young son looked up at him, waiting for an answer. Can machines really tell the truth? Isaiah looked down at the worn piece of metal in his palm. For a moment, he saw Mount Zion's old organ room, his grandfather's hand over his, teaching him not to rush a sound just because the world was loud. Then Isaiah crouched so the child would not have to look up at him. Machines tell you what you are willing to listen for, he said. The boy nodded slowly, as if that made more sense than anything the adults had said all night. A soft breath moved through the staff gathered near the service corridor. Marlene wiped under one eye before the tear could fall. Nolan Reeves watched Isaiah rise, then turned toward the red velvet rope that had separated the guests from the workers all evening. He unhooked it himself. The brass post made a small sound against the floor, not dramatic, not loud, but everyone heard it. This comes down tonight, Nolan said. No more side door rule for contract staff during public events. Anyone working in this building enters with a name, not a label. Marcus Bell reached toward Isaiah's chest. May I? Isaiah gave a small nod. Marcus peeled the yellow delivery sticker from the hoodie carefully, folded it once, and placed it on the torn incident form instead of throwing it away. That belongs in the file, Marcus said. So we remember what was done. It was not enough to erase the humiliation, but it was the first honest thing he had done with his hands all night. Lena returned Clara's Polaroid to the clear sleeve and placed the binder back on the podium, open and visible, no longer hidden behind an inventory tag. Mrs. Reeves's notes stay with the car, she said. And so does the correction. Nolan nodded. Then he faced Marlene, not the crowd, not the cameras. Mrs. Brooks, I owe you an apology in front of the same room that watched you be threatened. Marlene straightened. She did not smile. She accepted the words with the dignity of someone who had gone too long without hearing them. Thank you, she said. But make sure it happens to the next woman before she needs an apology. Nolan took that in. It will. He asked Lena to draft the first notice before the guests left. An independent audit, staff dignity training, and a new Clara Reeves apprenticeship fund for students who had talent before they had credentials. Not a prize tossed at Isaiah like hush money. An open door built in Clara's name. For kids who heard problems others dismissed. If you want it, Nolan said to Isaiah, the first interview is yours. Not because you were humiliated, because you were right. Isaiah looked at his mother. Marlene's hand found his shoulder, warm and steady. We will talk about it, Isaiah said. No performance. No vow. Just a boy protecting the shape of his own future. Across the hall, Graham Holt stood outside the archive office with Marcus beside him, his access card no longer opening the door. He looked smaller without the room obeying him. Isaiah did not stare. He did not need to. The punishment was no longer his to carry. As Marlene and Isaiah walked through the main hall, the dishwasher who had spoken up gave Isaiah a shy nod. The caterer's son reached out one finger toward the tuning fork. Isaiah let him touch it. The old metal gave the faintest ring, a clean note that floated above the Ferrari, above the glass walls, above the polished floor where everyone had seen a boy treated like he did not belong. By the time the sound faded, no one was looking at the uniform, the worn shoes, the sticker, or the color of the hand holding the fork before they saw the person standing there.